All right, welcome back. For those that went with us into the break, you find us deeply buried in some budget statistics, but also a perspective much needed on how Ugandans will move forward. It's the Kickstarter, and we'll be talking about what the budget means for business. That is the financial year 2025-2026 budget that was delivered by the finance minister last week. Particularly today, we want to delve into the revised version of the AFRIS. That is some very controversial payment system that was introduced more than a year ago. It pitted the traders within Kampala and metropolitan areas against Uganda Revenue Authority, and it was waived for some improvements to be made. But we do understand that another version of it, especially to the landlords, will be needed in order for tenants to come clean on payments. There are those who are saying that government is concerned this time around because it's a victim, especially when it comes to delayed payments to landlords around the city. And that is why the State Minister for Investment, Evelyn Anite, was at pains to agree with it, describing it as impractical. Is it? Well, that is something we are going to delve into. However, we must come to, on the backdrop of the fact that the 72.36 trillion shilling budget is one that plans on a domestic revenue collection of up to 37 trillion Uganda shillings. That puts the pressure on Uganda Revenue Authority to come up with the money, and we all know where URA will be going for this money. In studio, I'm joined by the chairman of KACITA, Thaddeus Musoke. I'm also joined by executive director, rather not chairman, Thaddeus Musoke. I'm also joined by Bernard Cankara, an economist and public policy scholar. Many thanks for making time, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Great. Let me begin with Mr. Musoke. Not the least because you are a trader, but one who is at the forefront of these policy shifts and calls for government to align itself, especially when it rolls out many of these taxes to the plight and the realities of Ugandans, traders inclusive. First and foremost, an overview of the budget as it came through last week, and then we shall delve into exactly what the traders' pain points are.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Genyi, and the viewers and my comrade. Anyway, when we analyze the budget, currently the processes have improved so greatly by adoption of stakeholders' engagement during the budgeting process, whereby Ugandans have a chance also to participate and even to present their views during the budget process. As KACITA, we submitted a lot, but some were rejected. But to a certain extent, you find that at least some of our views were considered. We had a serious concern about taxes on garments and textile, where our position was, can the government revisit the tax policy or measure of charging clothes basing on kilo, because it's not practical. We have been engaged in several media platforms clearly presenting our concerns, because like when you're purchasing clothes, sincerely, they don't charge you, they don't cost you basing on the kilo. It's based on the piece or meter measurements. But unfortunately, it wasn't considered. But again, on a certain extent, we got a win, whereby at least the kilo, which before used to pay around $3.5 per kilo, at least now they reduced to 2.5 on garments. And then on textile, which they used to charge us $3 per kilo, but now it's $2. It's $2 per kilo. At least there is a win to the business community. And it came on a very critical moment where tomorrow morning at 10, we are going to have a special engagement with URA, where traders have failed to clear goods. Over 200 containers are stuck. We cannot clear. And the reason was that when the several engagements with URA, we decided to go clean. When there are no manyanga. But unfortunately, when we decided to go clean or saved, you find that when our members tried to clear their goods, they cannot afford the taxes. This is a very great concern which we need to engage seriously with the government, because when the taxes are not complex, they are not easily understandable, they are high, you find that it facilitates smuggling. And the role of all Ugandans is to make sure that we comply and meet our tax obligations so that we can support our budget. So unfortunately, when the taxes are unfair to the trading community, business community, that's where the smuggling comes in. So through some other engagements, we are caught off guard by URA, by serious verifications. But unfortunately, now our traders cannot clear those goods. But basing on this new intervention, you never know, it can try to save the business community. But also, when you observe the budget, the government had decided also to take priority human capital development, skilling, even the well-being and others. And you find that the allocation in Zama are almost 15.8%. And that's around 11.4 trillion. I think this is a good initiative, if fully implemented. And if corruption is seriously handled by the government. You know the challenges with government when it comes in implementation. And also, where we got also somehow concerned, I was happy that also the Honorable Minister tried to highlight it. You find that domestic alias are crippling businesses in this country. And by the way, the business community is not nowadays comfortable with doing business with government because totally they delay the payments. As KACITA, we have had several petitions where the banks wanted to auction our members' property. And by the way, before even you access that loan facility, you have already assurance that you are going to get a contract. Unfortunately, they over-delay about the payments, but we are happy. Now there was an improvement from 200 billion to 1.4 trillion. You never know. It's little, but it's better. We just hope that the government, through these engagements, they try to make sure that they improve, but they suffocate and even they affect the cash flow in our businesses. And also, we are happy that to make sure that we urgently rejected the proposal of stamp duty on agreements and contracts. This was making to complicate all business transactions. Because now someone is employing a Ugandan. You know the challenge we're having with unemployment. And then again you are charging. You are charging. We are happy that the government was able to adopt our submission and also scrapped off the stamp duty. And also where the business community was seriously considered, we had an argument that why are foreign investors enjoying tax incentives? Why they don't pay for 10 years taxes? And after the expiry of the 10-year tax holiday, they can rebrand. Indirectly, they are cheating us. Alternatively,
they can rebrand and be eligible for another 10 years.
Yes, yes. Alternatively, even they can migrate to another country. But you find that at least we had requested for 10 years tax holiday for Ugandan businesses. But we got 3 years. 3 years is 50-50, but the engagement is ongoing. 10 years would be better. But we are happy also for the what? For the 3 years. And also for the special consideration of tax. You know, you have failed to pay the taxes, then there is interest, then there is penalty. This special consideration of weaving off those penalties, also that is a win and a special consideration. You see, all these improvements are because of the improvement of the budget process. When stakeholders are engaged, you just know that at least it will be fair. Unfortunately, we still have a poor perception. Some people take budgeting processes for granted. Let me give an example. I was shocked that most of the chairs were empty for our members of parliament. Who we voted to represent us. This is a very serious document which has a direct impact on every Ugandan. And that's why sometimes things are passed and they are ignorant that, are we the one who passed this budget? If you decide to boycott the budget process, the budget process, and even the budget when it's being presented to the nation, so what do you expect? So we need to sensitize Ugandan the importance
of some of
the budget process and the budget, because it affects every Ugandan, and this is a very serious process.
Serious concern.
That's what briefly I can submit.
All right, thank you very much for what is no doubt a very good overview. I'm sure as we go along the discussion, we shall be going back and forth and doing overlaps on some of the issues, especially as we seek to understand exactly how this budget is an enabler for businesses across the country. But Mr. Bernard Cankara, your thoughts on the budget and how it plays into the government plans, especially in light of Vision 2040, one that has been touted as anchored on the ATMs, and that is something about the 10-fold growth strategy. What's your take?
Well, thank you very much. I think I should start by congratulating Mr. Musoke and KACITA. It is rare that you hear the voices, the positivity he's saying,
coming through.
I think the business community has achieved a lot of wins in this previous budget. Our business community we are coming from a background where it is largely dominated by the small and medium enterprises, which constitute about, I think, 90% and contributes the highest amount of revenue collection to government. And so it is rightly that government listens to the business community, because, well, the corporation that we are targeting now in its current state only contribute, I think, about 8% to the revenue collection nationally, which is relatively low. Largely, our large corporations ends up in exemptions. We lose about 40%, $40 trillion to tax exemptions, and that is largely to the corporation. So I think it is in good spirit that government, in its attempt, is making to boost the small and medium enterprises. So it is rightly, if I hear your voices correctly, I think it is in the good direction that the business community have made achievement in terms of their negotiations and budget negotiations. Chris, the budget presented by the Ministry of Finance and government is about $72 trillion dollars. When you look at the actual investment into what we call the ATMs, it's about, when you look at, for example, agro-industry that we are focusing on, it's about 1.6 trillion. Then you have tourism. Aggregatively, it is about 2.6 trillion. And mineral base is about 0.7 in this current financial year. And that's about just over 5 trillion. Now, when you look at 5 trillion vis-a-vis
the 72
trillion, then you question exactly where is government priorities. Government is speaking about monetization, full monetizations of the economy. Now, when you look at the actual, what they now say now, the actual drivers of monetization of the economy, in UDB, they have put 1.45 trillion. In PDM, which I think it takes majority of the Ugandans, it's just 3.3 trillion over in the for the previous financial year. Then Emioga. So in total, they're looking at about 9 trillion vis-a-vis the 72 trillion. The point I'm trying to say here is that as much as government spirit it's in terms of full monetization and then the ATM's investment, still a huge chunk of our annual budget goes into debt servicing. The Ministry of Finance oftentimes has said that our debt is sustainable. Well, the debt itself might be sustainable because it's within your budget, but how much is it taking from your collection? And that is where the concerns are, because if a huge chunk of your revenue is going into debt servicing, and then you have less priority, lesser income or lesser revenue that you are actually prioritizing to the different focus direction that you've actually spelled out in the national development National Development Plan. So for me, the budget in itself, it's not bad, but like I said before, sustainably, a 72 trillion budget, it still does not take Uganda. We don't have that capacity to manage a 72 trillion. And that is why oftentimes we see government start operating a budget, they are on cash deficit, they are struggling, cash flows are struggling. They have domestic arrears they cannot pay because collections revenues are low. And then they have to go into domestic borrowing, which again squeezes the business community in terms of access to credit. And that, in a nutshell, makes it difficult for government of Uganda to operate a 72 trillion because of the way we operationalized our expenditure versus income, but also our collections. The whole ecosystem of revenue collection is still challenging, and I think there is more to be done.
Okay, no doubt. Of course, the prong on broadening the tax base instead of deepening it is something that URA is very strong on, and that explains what the overhaul of the tax laws was. Of course, in the run-up to the budget presentation, we know that MPs amended the income tax law, VAT, excise duty, tax procedure code, stamp duty, as you talked of a little bit earlier, but also external trade bills to facilitate generation of money that is needed. I just wanted to take us through, Mr. Musoke, the cluster of taxes that you are dealing with in light of the new, or rather the budget embedded either improvements. I don't know whether they are sufficient enough for you, but given your overview earlier, I think it's something that is worth writing home about. Just take us through the cluster of taxes and how you respond to each of them as traders.
Mainly, what was mainly affecting the business community are the multiple taxes. For instance, why was IFRIS becoming a serious concern? I was happy when you talked about the IFRIS. I don't know why people are so much excited about the IFRIS, but because I think what happened some time back.
Yeah.
But just I want also to use this opportunity to explain to the public or to make some reminder mainly about the IFRIS. Our position on IFRIS was, can the government stop rushing to implement the technology or the digital platform, IFRIS? Because when they rushed to implement it, it was harshly received by our trading community, mainly the small businesses. And our position was, let the government implement IFRIS on corporation or bigger companies or big entities, and even at least established business entities like supermarkets. And why our demonstration, or maybe our shutdown of the or closure of shops assisted the public was that we made a simple example of a mineral water bottle, which was penalized 6 million. And you know the cost, unless maybe you come here like at Serena. but downtown in Chikubo, we are just selling it, even we have a bottle of 500 shillings, and even 1,000. How can you charge it 6 million? And by the way, this is a serious political year. My appeal to the public, as we are voting our members of parliament, let us have that special consideration. Is your member of parliament knowledgeable? Is your member of parliament down on ground? Does he know the suffering with the trading community go through? So we are happy that it was revisited, and this was after the intervention of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, and instructed URA to engage us to make sure these concerns are revisited. And that's why you see the penalty was scrapped, almost scrapped. So it is now considering basing on what you were supposed to pay as tax times 3 is understandable.
Okay.
So what also we had requested, can the government reconsider that there is what we call technology adoption. It's supposed to be a process. Up to now, just imagine, some people are not comfortable with using even these mobile platforms for payments. For payments. Because it has to be a gradual process. Okay. We are happy that this budget had a special consideration. What wasn't considered, our position was, can the government also revisit withholding tax? Withholding tax.
Withholding
tax of 6%.
Allow me, let's hold it on withholding tax and what you need government to do on that, and go for a break. And when we return, you will begin right from where you are right now. You're watching MorningAtNTV. It's the Kickstarter, and we're trying to understand just how the budget for the 2025-2026 financial year is an enabler for businesses across the country. You're with us. We are looking at the 2025-2026 budget and how just an enabler it is for local businesses, including the raft of taxes that have been rolled out. Some improvements, some demonstrate that government listened to the cries of the traders and business persons. Mr. Thaddeus Musoke, the ED at KACITA, was giving us perspective on withholding tax and a range of others in the cluster of taxes that Uganda Revenue Authority hopes will generate much of the needed revenue. He will continue with that, but just to ensure that Mr. Bernard Cankara is preparing for what is no doubt something that should help us understand what options are there for the central bank, especially now that we have two new honchos in place, the fiscal place within which they can play in order for Uganda to achieve most of these goals. You'll be taking us through that on a policy perspective after Mr. Musoke finalizes the submission on the taxes and withholding tax.
I wanted also to make some clarification. My ED may just got shocked that the chairman.
My apologies.
The chairman now is the ED. We have our
you
ED.
are the chairman, KACITA.
Yeah. And the chairman
KACITA has
KACITA.
an ED.
Yes, we have our ED. It's called Abe Mwesije.
Mr. Abe Mwesije, please.
Don't get scared.
Do not fire Mr. Musoke. It is entirely my mistake. Many times these designations
we have structures.
overlap.
Now he's heading the secretariat and the overall as the chairman.
Okay, you do grapple with the same things we do. Editor, producer, anchor, sometimes we can have overlaps.
But
all right, please.
Anyway, our concern was about that the tax, withholding tax. It is really a big challenge to our businessmen. And also, it has a direct impact on the cost of doing business. You see that just here in Kenya, when they introduced a 2% withholding tax, it was highly rejected, and you know what caused, what happened in our neighborhood, Kenya. So, but I don't know why the parliament and even URA, they are insisting on withholding, because they suggested that they introduced the withholding because of tax compliance. But now with adoption of technology, the compliance levels have totally improved, and even the sensitization drives, which we as business associations in partnerships with URA are implementing, you find the perception towards tax compliance has improved, but this is also becoming a very big obstacle. And also we had suggested that, most of the goods which we import, they charge 35%. Our position was, can they reduce on those taxes so that it can enable the business community to comply and to meet their tax obligation. And our position to defend that was, we gave a scenario of Dubai. Dubai, it has become a hub of business throughout the world. And we thought that now Uganda is strategically positioned. We can be the Dubai of Africa. But unfortunately, it wasn't considered. Also, we had a big challenge on VAT, that 18%. We thought that now, in order to compete with Kenya, because it had other advantages, it has the cost, it has even improved infrastructure, network, even the standard rail gauge. We thought that in order to compete with our comrades in Kenya, at least we could also adopt the 16%. So why is this? We are being outcompeted with business community in Kenya. So most of our market, you see in South Sudan, Congo, Rwanda, now they have migrated to our neighbors, Kenya. So you find that now even the hospitality industry has been affected. So these, and we think that these taxes were supposed to be revisited. Even the threshold for VAT, we had proposed 1 billion, but just annual sales of 150 million. You find that also complicates, and that's what even the trading community highly rejected the IFRIS, because those are small entities which at times cannot afford the extra expenses of technology adoption. So our position was, if they were seriously revisited, I think our business community also could benefit. Also, our concern was about, you know, also we have the infrastructure levy, environmental levy. You know, they have put several taxes, which also have a direct impact on the cost of doing business. But also, we were somehow impressed because we're having a very serious issue with transportation and infrastructure in this country. But given the fact that this time it was 8.8%, which was allocated, we think mainly this is to cater for, I think, the standard daily gauge. But also, our appeal is, can we improve even this, is it called?
Meter gauge.
There is a word I want to use. But for the meantime,
Uganda Railway.
that old age, what, I don't know, something. There is a word what they use in Swahili. I don't know if it is something that I'm forgetting. Okay, but the fact is that we need to be serious. My friend, now transportation issues in this city, they have become terrible. And sometimes when we present, one comrade I was in certain presentation, now Dr. Musoke, because you are contesting for the Lord Mayorship, now you are using it as a technique for campaign. But seriously, jam is unbearable.
It's unbearable.
And it has a direct cost on doing. Why am I concentrating? We need business enablers. We need to build the capacity of our business community so that we can own this economy. We get sometimes scared that you find that most of our communities, we know that those are big guys. They have issues with meeting their bank obligations. And this is what we need to discuss as a country to make sure there are several interventions which can facilitate business development. And by the way, that's why you see if the PDM, if we are taking PDM as a serious concern, we want to migrate those ones into money economy. But the people already were in money economy who are paying the taxes. They need those special consideration and engagement to make sure that at least their concerns are highly considered. Okay,
we shall talk cost of credit a little bit later, but allow me to engage Mr. Bernard Cankara on the earlier question of the fiscal space and the ability of the central bank to play well within how it aligns us with the challenges we face as a nation.
Well,
those could be geopolitical, aligning tax policy to Kenya, Tanzania, and the rest of the East African community in order to ensure intra-East Africa trade is facilitated.
Absolutely. The central bank is the main regulator of financial space. And you see, government of Uganda has consistently said that Uganda has a stable inflation. But stable at what level? This is economy.
Below 7?
I'm saying government of Uganda has often said that Uganda is operating under a stable inflation rate. And it is true when you look at our exchange rate and foreign earnings and all these other things, you come to realize that there is a little bit of stability in our shillings. But when you practically look at it, you find that money moves quite easily off people's hands. Those are issues that central bank should start dealing with, because those are now operationalizing the policy direction that they're taking. Because you earn some little money and money moves quite faster. You find established organizations, established businesses, they're operating in high volumes of sales, and yet at the end of the financial year, they're not able to pay taxes. So then you question yourself. You find a business in downtown is operating in over 500 million, okay? But at the end of the financial year, the person cannot file returns. In other words, he's in zero. About
negative.
Yes, or in negative. About 35% of our SMEs are they're not in position to pay taxes, and yet in some of them are operating in high volumes of sales. And then you question yourself, okay, where is the mismatch? Where do we find that someone is operating high volume of income and can't pay taxes? And yet, if you go to the process of compliance of such an organization or business, you realize that they're spending over $500 or $1,000 in making an attempt to comply with the URL requirement, and yet at the end of the day, it is a nil return. So those are complex economic policies that government needs to pay attention. So stable inflation is does not necessarily translate into profitability of businesses. Yeah, you might have a stable inflation rate, but businesses are operating in losses, and so those are now technical issues that central bank needs to interest themselves with. But there are also others. For example, access to credit. Government of Uganda has put a huge chunk of money to the Uganda Development Bank. And then when you look at the processes of access to that credit, it's a very tedious process, yeah? And many of our SMEs ends up not profiting from those from that money that has been put access to credit, but also at what percentage. In other countries, they are even willing to offer, if you have demonstrated your authenticity and your processes and all these other things, you can actually have a zero access to credit, especially there are some other countries. And so our central bank, and of course UDB may need to be interested in some of those issues. There are other things, for example, tax exemptions. I have said here not once, not twice, that you can't be giving tax holidays for 10 years and you're attracting investments, and then all these corporations over the years aggregatively contribute 8% to our income. That is worrying, because what that means is that you're exempting entirely all your revenue collections, yeah, and then your growth is being stagnated. There are other fiscal policies. For example, I looked at the recent exemptions of textile and garments, for example, and then vis-a-vis government directions of, because when you reduce taxes on garments, you're actually encouraging import into the country, and yet you're a country that is trying to move out of, to try to attract investment so that you can move out of importations. Because what that does to our fiscal position, financial position, is that our balance of payment becomes much tilted. We're losing more money to other countries, and then we're gaining less. Yeah. And so if government spirit is to encourage import substitutions, then exemption of tax and garment can be challenged on those bases, because then what clothes are we producing in this country? The president has often said we should stop putting on dead people's clothes, in quote and quotes. I've quoted him saying that. He has also been a president that is proud of putting on a shirt made in Uganda, and yet reduction in our textile or garments. In other words, he's saying that doesn't favor domestic local production. In some countries, they have taken very aggressive processes and policies in which they say that, okay, let's say all schools, for example, I think in Burkina Faso, I read somewhere, that all schools or secondary schools or primary schools should wear clothes that are manufactured from within the country. So I think there is a lot. That is more deliberate. Yes, there is a lot more that needs to be done. But largely, lastly, on the fiscal discipline that I cannot go without saying, is that government has always said that they will not borrow from domestic market. Yeah, in the other previous financial year, in the budget framework paper indicated that there was going to be a reduction in domestic borrowing from government. It did not take more than 6 months before government ran to Stanbic Bank to borrow to give payout to Omeme. And then it squeezed the business community, the access to credit that they should have got. And so increasingly, the central bank should interest itself not borrowing from the domestic market, because then you squeeze the business space. That's right. And then you increase the cost of capital. All right, let me return to Mr. Thaddeus Musoke, and this one goes on.
But I want also to make some clarification. This
Please.
man is bringing us problems. This is a win for us, and now he's saying that he wants to promote Bubu. Yes, but by the way, I also need to make some clarification.
It is a win-win. It is a win-win. There must be a space where we
make some clarification. Why did we try to reach on that? The fact is, even if it's 2%, the tax is not bearable. I've told you.
On the governments?
Yes, on governments.
Yeah.
By the way, this slight decrease, we don't feel it for the meantime. That's why today we're having an urgent meeting to internalize with our consultants how best we can handle. Because the fact is, like the containers I've told you, they are stuck around 200 containers. We used to pay around 120 million. Currently, when you decide to go clean every container is around 400.
Wow. The emphasis is when you decide to
almost
go clean.
Almost. It has, I don't know, tripled. So there is no worry. For the meantime, our industries are protected. And also we had a serious concern. Personally, I use Ugandan products. I think in this studio I'm the only one who is now supporting Bubu. This is locally made.
This one is also this tailor-made locally.
I know that suit is around 800,000.
You man.
That one is a very expensive suit. You see my comrade's suit, but
you're misleading the audience.
Chris, and you know the funny thing now, this textile, no industry in this country can make such quality textile. So it's a process. What we did with our business community, whatever is locally manufactured, let us support our local industry so that we build their capacity, production capacity. And also currently, we are concentrating, we have a strategy as KACITA to promote our locally made products within Africa and East Africa. But the capacity and the quality needs to improve. That's why we need more time. This is a gradual process to industrialization.
Okay. Allow me to seek clarity on something. When it comes to fabric manufactured in Uganda, is it a case of the product itself, i.e., for example, the cotton fabric that you have, manufactured in Uganda, or is it the design, the cloth, the designing of it that is done in Uganda?
No,
we need clarity on that.
This design is...
The material is in Uganda?
No, the material, no
imported material.
It's imported.
It is purely imported.
It is imported,
but designed and manufactured
but designed and manufactured locally here. And by the way, my designer is one of the...
It is designed and tailored in
You see,
Uganda.
our neighbor here, this lady trained from this institution with the president established.
All right.
So Ugandans are getting more employed with this initiative.
So let's be clear on this Bubu
It is
thing.
tailored in Uganda.
Yes.
Designed and tailored in Uganda, but manufactured out.
President Yoweri Museveni's white shirts are tailored in Uganda.
In Uganda, and
but the material is imported.
When I didn't get a chance.
Let's be clear on that.
I didn't get a chance to be near the big man, you know, the security side. But also I wanted to test the textile.
You wanted to touch it out.
Yes, but unfortunately I didn't get the chance. But basing when we met some research on most of the industries here, sometimes we have discovered, I will show you one of the letter we submitted to URA. We got info that these guys that they are locally manufacturing these clothes even from here, and they import semi-finished and even sometimes finished garments to outcompete us. You find the Chinese selling the same shirt almost at the same cost you bought it in China. Why? They have tried to maneuver through our tax procedures and they don't pay taxes. So we need to discuss a lot. And by the way, basing on the research we accessed even with our comrades at URA, do you know that our traders are the ones paying taxes? Our local industries, they don't pay taxes. So if the big man wants even to make sure that the budget is facilitated...
You're pitting traders against manufacturers.
No, because I'm currently the chairman of the trading community.
Yeah.
So, but we need my submission is evidence-based. Also, I wanted to thank my comrade.
Very quickly.
He has clearly presented about our concern about domestic borrowing. We are totally against domestic borrowing. We have a big challenge with access to finance. And even our concern is that the government has continuously allocated money to ease credit access. But my friend Chris, I'm here. You're a senior journalist. You try to go to Uganda Development Bank. Even our submission was, can Uganda Development Bank redesigned to make sure it's supposed to be a bank to facilitate industrialization? You're supposed to be a partner. We could borrow a model from Islamic banking. Like when it comes in, you have a good proposal, let us facilitate you until you break even. And even you start servicing or meet your bank obligation. We are having petitions where projects funded by Uganda Development, even people cannot meet their obligation. Why? The process is too bureaucratic. Even worse than commercial bank.
Interesting. Yeah. Let's stay on that issue.
But then for me now to send me to Uganda Development Bank to get money and even recommend people, you rather tell me, please, Musoke, go to Masaka on foot to Bishu.
Bernard, the aspect of businesses being allowed to break even before they can be subjected to the cluster or range of taxes is something that has been widely welcomed, especially in the startup world. However, the challenges that we have seen over the years is that the other business aspects and circumstances might not even allow some companies to enjoy this tax exemption. For example, if a company, its startup, for example, is grappling with lack of access to credit, for example, it could occasion upon it closure before it even makes 1 year. Others could even go 3 years but fail to break even. Meaning, by rolling out this policy where you're not taxed on account of making profit, you've not made any profit anyway. So at the end of the day, what is government trying to say? Is it a case of letting itself off the pressure, as in I've tried to do something when actually nothing has been done?
So, Chris, the biggest challenge the business community faces is the enabling environment, the cost of doing business in this country, not necessarily in terms of access to credit, but the drivers of doing business. For example, the cost of fuel, the transportation, the access to raw material, at what cost? So, the entire business environment and the cost of doing business in this country is exorbitantly high. And the way our tax system has been designed is that it will suck money out of you at every stage of your business operations. Right. And so it becomes longer for you to hit break even. And that is why for most of our SMEs that manage to struggle through the tough business environment of losing money at every stage of this of your business operations, you will take between 5 to 10 years to be able to hit break even if you've invested a significant amount of money. It is never immediate. And yet, if you are not making break even, access to credit becomes extremely difficult.
Yeah.
You can't walk to any commercial bank to access credit when you have not hit break even. And that means you have to make sure that you have to survive for at least 5 years without access to credit. Remember, no bank can loan you money if you have you're operating a deficit budget. Sure. Your financial income is a negative. You can't go to any commercial bank to get money. Even if you go to UDB will still struggle unless there is a clear demonstration of investment potential. So
maybe even when you're highly connected.
Or even when you're highly connected. Now that is a theory within government. So the enabling environment is critical. And like I said, you lose money so easily. And that also is not necessarily for individuals. It is also for companies. And so surviving to hit break-even is completely difficult for our business community, and that is why our environment...
And that's why we are very mean with our money.
So it is... The business environment is quite challenging. The other thing which I might also want to comment on is the enforcement. Yeah. The policies are there. The enforcement takes a different direction. That's why, if you quote my chairman here, his statement, he said, unless you're very connected, those are now enforcement challenges in terms of the words that is using, or when you decide to be very honest in your transactions and come clean,
which is also very costly.
That is now an enforcement language. It is a challenge within enforcement, our enforcement industry, and so that goes back to the URA and of course the different stakeholders in our business ecosystem. How do we engage? How do we ensure transparency and honesty? URA, the challenge it struggles with is that it is focusing on the depth, not the breadth. Yeah, and government has also, because when you look at our nature of business, it's repetitive. Everyone is waking up to open a restaurant. Everyone is doing clothes. Everyone is doing almost the same thing.
The same thing.
Yeah. So there is no room for innovation. Government has not deliberated. We are investing in ICT, but we have not created an environment where we can have new innovation, so that we can have new tax head or new tax avenue. So everyone is going on the same thing. And so you find that one particular person is paying tax at so many different intervals. So ideally, it is the same tax levels, the same tax heads that we are taxing, not the breadth. So
okay, I'm glad you put it that way. URA has often complained very vehemently about the fact that it's difficult to even pinpoint certain traders or certain businesses because of informality. I know members within KACITA have a certain level of formality. You know the business, it's either registered, but we understand that the majority of businesses that URA says could actually form a greater chunk of the taxes for it to be able to meet its targets are not formal. So it's difficult to go for them. I don't know whether there has been a deliberate effort between the established business organizations like KACITA and others to help URA on that aspect of these businesses getting formalized in order to not to deepen but to broaden the tax base.
You know, I'm sorry to use this word, but I don't know the officials at the Ministry of Trade, the witch doctor they are using. I'm sorry to use such a statement. Because
we understand the analogy.
People they are leaving the Ministry of Trade isolated. But let us ask ourselves, is the minister in the Ministry of Trade doing the needful? Is he meeting his obligation and his officials in the Ministry of Trade? I think his mandate is to make sure they champion formalization. It's not that every aspect should be handled by URA. What is the role of Ministry of Trade? I want to tell you this. We have several platforms. By the way, also I want to tell you again, currently I joined the Entrepreneurship League within the ruling government because also it wasn't active. But they're supposed to advise the president, who is at least even the advisors of the president about the trading issues. But the fact is, leave alone the being not so active and meeting its obligation as the ministry, but even the budget concerns. Let me give an example. The Uganda Registration Bureau. We have engaged it, Master, she's my friend, but you find that they don't have even budget allocation to sensitize the public about formalization. And for us as an association, we render free platform to such entities because we know the concerns. What is the problem with the Uganda Bureau of Standards? You see the budget allocation. There are concerns. How do you expect someone to formalize? How do you expect someone to formalize? So we need to have a serious drive to sensitize our comrades about the advantages of formalization, about every Ugandan should formalize to make sure that you have a contribution to the budget. So that is becoming a very big problem. But for me, I think we need to revamp the Ministry of Trade. We need to allocate more to the Registration Bureau, and even we have comrades, by the way. Literally, I went into manufacturing, but even to be certified.
You seem to have your hands in so many
areas. For me, what I did, I did
aggressive entrepreneur.
Yes, because, I started as a street vendor. I know how I suffered. Then later, I maneuvered into media. So I used the media to market my business
because there is no money.
but anyway, now for survival, I'm happy about my comrade. I think also is a Muyiribi. For sure to survive.
Bernard Cankara. You know Muyiribi? Downtown Hustler.
Downtown Hustler, no.
I didn't know that it's a planned comrade.
I'm not a Muyiribi, but I understand policy from the perspective of the community.
Oh, planned comrade. You call them planned comrades. Okay, thank you. But the fact is, in Uganda, unless you diversify, it's so hard to survive. And my technique for me, we are trying to transfer also to the business community. Let us be migrating. You start as a small trader, you go into manufacturing. By the way, even the research I present to the president clearly shows the steps and measures how the government can intervene to make sure we boost. By the way, we have a big challenge. If you find that most of the big entities are foreign owned, look about the banking sector. How much profit is being remitted back to their original countries? Look about the big manufacturing entities. Almost all of them, they are for foreigners. So we need to make sure there is a dynamic strategy to make sure it allows local Ugandans to manufacturing. So we need these ministries to be seriously aggressive.
I'm glad you talk about that, and your enthusiasm is perfectly understandable. It feeds well into, and this is a question to you, Bernard Cankara, it feeds well into the agro-industrialization agenda as part of the ATMs. Many agricultural actors or people who are doing business in there, from transport, farmers themselves, and the middlemen. Agriculture does present a huge opportunity for us to do the diversification, because there's a whole range of products, coffee, these other crops. Increasingly, the other day I learned that cashew nut is apparently more than 25 times more expensive than coffee, meaning it could, could offer an opportunity for farmers.
Big orders.
You know?
I didn't know that is such a marketable product.
So agro-industrialization as an enabler for businesses, people ought to be supported sufficiently to do agriculture. I don't know whether an agricultural bank is something that is still being pushed by the key stakeholders, or is something totally forgotten.
So I think it's rightly so that government can diversify tax collection through our agricultural sector. However, we should really be cautious of where we're coming from.
And I think our pace of growth into commercialized agriculture has been relatively slow as compared to other major agricultural producing countries, for example, Egypt and others. We need to be slow. We have not transitioned effectively from subsistence to commercialized agriculture. A few have been able to do that, yeah? If we quickly rush into taxing the our agricultural industry, then we risk, we might benefit in the short term, but in the long term we will again suffer because we will curtail the transition from subsistence to commercialized agriculture. But that's not to say that we cannot start picking certain areas. The other day, I think last year, I don't know whether it was last year or this year, there was a debate, I think it was when Parliament was debating the previous financial budget, financial year for the previous budget. There was a debate, there was sort of a corridor response that came through, why don't we tax the cow industry? And that was quickly stampede on. Yeah. But and since then there has been no conversation of that nature whether we should. It was
completely killed.
Yes, it was stampede on, it was stepped on, it has never come back again. And then the conversation transitioned into coffee conversation. But yes, we should cautiously think of expanding our tax base using the agricultural, especially those that are now proving to be doing quite well, okay? The cow conversation can come to table, and we should be honest about this, yeah? There should be nothing sectarian in any way that when we talk about raising revenue to support government of Uganda, we should be sectarian. We should corner ourselves and say, no, for us we are coffee dealers and so we should not tax coffee. For us we are animal farmers, we are cow milk producers, we should not, we should not touch it. No, that should not be the spirit of having a conversation of developing Uganda. I think within the agricultural sector, there are certain products or crops or things that we can now start taxing. The cow industry is booming, yeah, everywhere. They are moving around the country. In Amuro, where I come from, we are fighting issues of Balalo, who offload thousands of cattle to graze in our land, and we are fighting this. So I think government should cautiously think of now introducing tax on certain agricultural heads that are doing quite well, and that will help us in raising revenue to develop our country.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. This has been a very exhaustive discussion, one that has we've tried to limit it to the tax regime, but also the critical enablers of business. Maybe a very last word as we transition. It's fast approaching the top of the hour and indeed the end of Morning at NTV. Let's have our last word, gentlemen. Mr. Musoke.
I just wanted to thank you and the management for enabling us to have such a great conversation. Most of Ugandans, by the way, at times they don't digest the content in the budget. That's why as KACITA we are planning to have several budget engagements to make sure that the public can identify the opportunities, and mainly my focus is on the trading community because we are having some tax exemptions, like for instance VAT on textile. This is so a great opportunity to enable our sisters who are into manufacturing. Is it tailoring also is manufacturing? To make sure that at least the raw material is affordable. And also, even at least you have now some leeway on some solar products. Can you also tap on that? Because you see as Umeme was exiting, now electricity has issues and has a direct impact on the cost of doing this. But I want to thank you for this opportunity and my comrade for great presentations. and our viewers.
You've gotten a new convert in downtown Kuyiriba.
I didn't pick the word you used. I said, is it Muimbi? Kuyiriba. I did not get it clearly, but I am
downtown trader.
Yes, downtown trader. I am not fully engaged, but I interact closely with our traders, and I come from the perspective that a good policy is one that listens to the people, and it is that is pro the people. And lastly, this is an election year. It's an election year that is crossing into next year, and I think one of the challenges at policy level is that we bring policymakers that do not understand what it is to make policy. Yeah. And so I encourage Ugandans to elect leaders that really understand how to make good policies. And I think that is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bernard Cankara, policy analyst and public policy scholar, is also contesting for Kilak South. So when when he talks about electing people that understand policy, he means that he's a good policy maker. Yes, and of course, Mr. Thaddeus Musoke also seeking to change things in Kampala as Lord Mayor. I wish you all guys the best, no doubt. I wish you all guys the best.